Further, Mahamati said, it is told by the Bhagavan again that true knowledge is gained independent of any object supporting it, and whatever statements one makes about it are no more than thought construction, and that this thought construction is not to be seized as real. The seizing act of the seizer itself ceases, and when there is thus no seizing, knowledge which is known as discrimination no more evolves. Now, Bhagavan, how is transcendental knowledge unobtainable? Is it unobtainable because of our not recognizing the generality and individuality of things, their pluralities, their unities? Or is it unobtainable because such ideas as individuality, generality, multiplicity, and self-nature overpower one another? Or is it unobtainable because of the obstructions presented by a wall, a mountain, an earthwork, a rampart, or by earth, wind, water, or fire? Or because of remoteness or nearness? Or does the knowledge fail to obtain its object of cognition because of the imperfection of the sense organs due to youth, age, or blindness? If, Bhagavan, knowledge was not obtainable because of our not recognizing individuality, generality, unity, and plurality, then, Bhagavan, such cannot be transcendental knowledge. It is to be called ignorance, ajnana. For in spite of the fact that objects to be known are before us, we do not know them. Again, if knowledge is unobtainable because such ideas as individuality, generality, multiplicity, and self-nature overpower one another, such as ignorance, ajnana. Bhagavan, it is not transcendental knowledge. Where there is something to be known, Bhagavan, knowledge evolves. Where there is nothing, none evolves. Knowledge is possible only where there is a correspondence with that which is known. Again, if knowledge is unobtainable because of the obstruction presented by a wall, mountain, earthwork, rampart, or by earth, water, wind, or fire, or due to farness or nearness, or on account of the imperfection of the sense organs, as in the case of an infant, the aged, and the blind, such as is unattainable is not transcendental knowledge. It is ignorance, for the object to be known is there, but the knowing faculty is lacking. Said the Bhagavan, Mahamati, such knowledge as is unobtainable is not ignorance, such is transcendental knowledge. Mahamati, it is not ignorance. It is not because of the deeper sense that I say this, but when we know that there is knowledge gained independent of any supporting objects, whatever statements we make about it are no more than thought constructions. That transcendental knowledge is unobtainable due to the recognition that there is nothing in the world but is what is seen of the mind, and that these external objects to which being and non-being are predicated are non-existent. As knowledge is unobtainable, there is no evolving of knowing and known, and as thus the triple emancipation is realized, there is unattainable knowledge which is transcendental. But logicians, being under the habit energy of the wrong reasoning which is carried on since beginningless time as to existence and non-existence, are unable to know all this, and while not knowing it, they are concerned with such notions as external objects, substances, forms, indications, existence and non-existence, and yet they declare that the cessation of discrimination is the state of mind only, and as they tenaciously clinging to the thought of an ego soul and all that belongs to it, they are really unable to understand what is meant by the doctrine of mind only, and go on discriminating known and knowing and known. And because of their discriminating knowing and known, they think of things as existent and non-existent, and declaring that transcendental knowledge is unobtainable, abide in nihilism. So it is said, if transcendental knowledge fails to see an objective world which lies before it, such as ignorance and not knowledge, this teaching belongs to the logicians. If transcendental knowledge fails to see through the various obstructions, far and near, its own unique object that does not present itself as an object, such as to be called wrong knowledge. If transcendental knowledge fails to know on account of defective senses such as infancy, old age, and blindness, its own object which is present, such as to be called wrong knowledge. Further, Mahamati, the ignorant and simple-minded keep on dancing and leaping, fascinated with their wrong reasonings, falsehoods, and self-discriminations, and are unable to understand the truth of self-realization and its discourse in words. Clinging to the external world which is seen of the mind itself, they cling to the study of discourses which are a means, and do not know properly how to ascertain the truth of self-realization, which is the truth unspoiled by the fourfold proposition. Said Mahamati, Bhagavan, it is just as you say. Pray tell me, Bhagavan, about the characteristic features of the truth of self-realization and about the discourses on it, whereby I and other bodhisattva mahasattvas in future time, understanding what they are, may keep ourselves away from the wrong logicians such as the philosophers and those who belong to the vehicles of the Sravaka and the Pratyeka Buddha. Said the Bhagavan, then Mahamati, listen well and reflect well within yourself, I will tell you. Certainly, Bhagavan, said Mahamati, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, and gave ear to the Bhagavan. The Bhagavan said this to him, Mahamati, there are two forms of teaching the truth attained by the Tathagatas, Arhats, fully enlightened ones of the past, present, and future. They are the teaching by discourses and the teaching by the establishment of self-realization. What is meant by the studying of the discourses is this, Mahamati. There are various materials and canonical texts and discourses by which sentient beings are taught according to their dispositions and inclinations. What then is the truth of self-realization by which the yogins turn away from discriminating what is seen of the mind itself? There is an exalted state of inner attainment which does not fall into the dualism of oneness and otherness, of bothness and not bothness, which goes beyond the Shita, Manas, and Manavijnana, which has nothing to do with logic, reasoning, theorizing, and illustrating, which has never been tasted by any bad logicians, by the philosophers, Shravakas, and Pratyeka Buddhas, who have fallen into the dualistic views of being and non-being. This I call self-realization. This, Mahamati, is what characterizes the truth of self-realization and discoursing on it, and in this you and other bodhisattva mahasattvas are to discipline themselves. So it is said, I have two forms of teaching the truth, self-realization and discoursing. I discourse with the ignorant and disclose self-realization to the yogins. At that time again, Mahamati, the bodhisattva mahasattva, said this to the Bhagavan. It was told at one time by the Bhagavan, the Tathagata, the Arhat, the fully enlightened one, that the Lokayatika, who is skilled in various forms of incantation and in the art of eloquence, is not to be honored, adored, and reverently attended upon. For what one gains from such devotions is worldly enjoyments, and not the Dharma or truth. For what reason is this said, Bhagavan, that by devoting ourselves to the Lokayatita, who is skilled in varieties of incantations and in the art of eloquence, worldly enjoyments are gained, but not the Dharma or truth? Said the Bhagavan, the Lokayatika, who is skilled in varieties of incantations and in the art of eloquence, Mahamati, puts the minds of the ignorant in utter confusion by means of various reasonings, by clever manipulation of words and phrases, and what he teaches, being the mere prattle of a child, as far as one can make out, is not at all in accordance with truth or nor in unison with sense. For this reason, Mahamati, the Lokayatita, is said to be skilled in varieties of incantations and in the art of eloquence. He attracts the ignorant by making clever use of various words, but he never leads them to the way of truth and right teaching. As he himself does not understand what all things mean, he puts the minds of the ignorant into utter confusion by his dualistic views, thus ruining himself. Not being released of the transition from one path to another, not understanding that there is nothing but what is seen of mind itself, and attaching himself to the idea of self-nature and external things, the Lokayatika knows no deliverance from discrimination. For this reason, Mahamati, the Lokayatika, who is clever in various incantations and in the art of eloquence, being thus never emancipated from such calamities as birth, age, disease, sorrow, lamentation, pain, and despair, leads the ignorant into bewilderment by means of various words, phrases, reasons, examples, and conclusions. Mahamati Indra was a brilliant Lokayatika whose knowledge made him master of many treatises, and who is himself the author of a work on sound. He had a disciple who, assuming the body of a serpent, went up to heaven and got into the society of the god Indra. Making up a thesis, he challenged the god, either your 1,000-spoke chariot be smashed into pieces, or every one of my own serpenthoods be cut off. In the argument, the Lokayatika disciple who had assumed the form of a serpent defeated the god opponent, whereupon the 1,000-spoke chariot was smashed to pieces. The disciple then came down again to this world. In such ways, Mahamati, the Lokayatika, has a system composed of various reasonings and exemplifications, and, knowing well even the minds of the animal world, puts the gods and fighting demons in utter confusion by means of various words and phrases. He then makes them tenaciously adhere to the notion of coming and going, aya vyaya. How much more human beings? For this reason, Mahamati, the Lokayatika is to be shunned, for he carries with him the cause leading to the birth of pain. No homage, no reverence, no service is to be shown him. Mahamati, the attainment of the Lokayatika does not go beyond the realm of body and knowledge belonging to it, though he may explain his materialism by using varieties of words and phrases amounting to 100,000. But in after times, after 500 years, divisions will take place among his followers, leading them to wrong reasonings and demonstrations. Divisions will be abound because of this, not being able to hold disciples. Thus Mahamati materialism, splitting into many parties and adhering to varieties of reasonings, is explained by the philosophers, each of whom clings to his way of reasoning, as he knows no truth existing by itself. While this is not at all the case with all the philosophers, who have their own treatises and doctrines, materialism is asserted under various disguises, which are explained by 100,000 different methods. There is in them also no truth existing by itself, and they do not recognize that theirs is materialism because of their stupidity. Said Mahamati, if all the philosophers teach materialism by means of various words, phrases, examples, and conclusions, which are not the truth as it is, but are their own selfish assertions tenaciously maintained, does not the Bhagavan too teach materialism by means of various words and phrases to the assemblages of gods, demons, and human beings who come from various countries? I say materialism which is not the truth of self-realization, but is something like the discourses of all the philosophers. The Bhagavan said, I do not teach materialism nor coming and going, avaya, but I teach Mahamati that which is not coming and going. Now Mahamati, coming means production and mass, it is born of accumulation. Going, Mahamati, means destruction. That which is not coming and going is designated unborn. Mahamati, I do not teach anything approaching the discrimination of the philosophers. For what reason? Because there are no external objects, there is nothing to get attached to. When one abides in mind only, beyond which there is no external world, dualism ceases. As there is no realm of form based on discrimination, one comes to recognize that there is nothing but what is seen of mind itself. And for these reasons, the discrimination of what is seen of mind itself does not take place. Owing to the cessation of discrimination, one enters into the triple emancipation, where is the state of no form, emptiness, and effortlessness. Hence it is called deliverance. I remember Mahamati when I was staying in a certain place, a Brahmin Lokayatika approached where I was, and having approached suddenly asked me, saying, Gautama, is all created? I said this to him, Brahma, if all is created, this is the first school of materialism. Gautama, is all uncreated? Brahman, if all is uncreated, this is the second school of materialism. Thus to state that all is non-eternal, or that all is eternal, or that all is born, or that all is unborn, this, Brahman, is the sixth school of materialism. Again, Mahamati, the Brahmin Lokayatika, said this to me. Gautama, is all one, is all different, is all characterized with boldness, is all characterized with not boldness, is all to be regarded as subject to causation, since all is seen as born of varieties of causes. This, Brahman, is the 10th school of materialism. Again, Gautama, is all explainable, is all unexplainable, is there an ego soul, is there no ego soul, is this world real, is this world not real, is there another world, is there no other world, is another world existent or non-existent, is there emancipation, is there no emancipation, is all momentary, is all not momentary, are space, apratisa, kaya nirodha, and nirvana, O Gautama, are they created or uncreated? Is there the middle existence? Is there no middle existence? I then said this to him, Mahamati. If so, Brahman, this is materialism. It is not mine. O Brahman, it is your worldly philosophy. I explained, Brahman, that the triple world has its cause in the habit energy of discrimination going on since beginningless time on account of error and wrong reasoning, for discrimination takes place. Brahman, because it is not recognized that there is no external world but the mind itself, and not because an external world is seen as the object of cognition. According to the philosophers, there is a triple concordance of an ego soul, sense organs, and an objective world, but such is not mine. Brahman, I do not belong to the school of causation nor to the school of no causation, except that I teach the chain of origination as far as the thought-constructed world of grasp and grasping exists, depending on discrimination. This is not understood by you and others who cherish the notion of an ego soul and its continuity. Mahamati, space, nirvana, and causation exist in enumeration. As realities, they are unobtainable. Hence the question whether they are created or not requires no answering. Again, Mahamati, the Brahmin Lokayatika, said this: Is the triple world to be regarded as caused by ignorance, desire, and action, or is it causeless? Brahman, this twofold question again belongs to materialism. Gautama, are all things to be conceived under the aspect of individuality and generality? This too, Brahman, belongs to materialism. So long as there is a mental perturbation which makes one cling to an objective world of discrimination, there is materialism. Further, Mahamati, this Brahmin materialist said this to me: Gautama, is there any philosophy that is not of the world? All the truth that is taught by all the philosophers by means of varieties of words and phrases, by means of reasonings, examples, and conclusions by general consent, Gautama, belongs to me. Brahman, there is something that does not belong to you, though it is not beyond the truth of general consent, nor independent of varieties of words and phrases, and further, it is not out of accord with reason. The Brahman asked, Is there any philosophy that is not of the world and yet belongs to the general opinion of the world? Brahman, there is that which does not belong to materialism and which is not reached by your wisdom, nor that of the philosophers who cling to false discriminations and wrong reasonings as they fail to see the unreality of external objects. By this is meant the cessation of discrimination. When it is recognized that there is nothing beyond what is seen of mind itself, the discrimination of being and non-being ceases. As thus there is no external world as the object of perception, discrimination abides in its own abode. This is not of materialism, it belongs to me, it does not belong to you. By abiding in its own abode is meant that it ceases to evolve. As discrimination is no more born, it is said to have ceased to evolve. This Brahman is not of materialism. In short, Brahman, if there is any coming and going of the Vijnanas, a vanishing and appearing, a solicitation, an attachment, an intense affection, a philosophical view, a theory, an abode, a touch, the clinging to various signs, assemblage, continuity, desire, trishna, an attachment to a cause, this, Brahman, is materialism of yours, but not mine. Mahamati, I was thus questioned by the Brahman's materialists, who came to me, and when he was thus set off, he silently departed. At that time there came to the Bhagavan the king of the Nagas called Krishna Pakshaka, who assumed the body of a Brahmin and said thus: Gautama, is there not another world? Now, young man, whence do you come? Gautama, I come from the White Isle. Brahmin, that is another world. The young man, thus refuted and put to silence, made himself invisible without asking me anything about my own teaching, which stands in opposition to his. He thought within himself, This son of the Sakyas stands outside my own system. He is a pitiable fellow. He belongs to the school which holds the cessation of signs and causes. He talks of the cessation of discrimination, which will take place when there is the cognition of an external world as something seen of one's own discrimination. And Mahamati, you ask me how, for one who serves the Lokayatika, skilled in various incantations and in the art of eloquence, there are worldly enjoyments and not the attainment of the Dharma. Said Mahamati, what is meant, Bhagavan, by the words the objects of worldly enjoyment and the Dharma? Said the Bhagavan, well said, Mahamati, you have thought deeply about this twofold meaning, having in view present and future generations. Then, Mahamati, listen well and reflect well within yourself, I will tell you. Certainly, Bhagavan, said Mahamati, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, and gave ear to the Bhagavan. The Bhagavan said this to him: What is meant by a worldly object of enjoyment, Mahamati? It means that which can be touched, attracted by, wiped off, handled, and tasted. It is that which makes one get attached to an external world, enter into a dualism on account of a wrong view, and appear again in the skandhas where, owing to the procreative force of desire, there arise all kinds of disasters, such as birth, age, disease, death, sorrow, lamentation, pain, despair, etc. This is called the object of worldly enjoyment by myself and other Buddhas. This, Mahamati, is the attainment of worldly enjoyments and not of the truth. It is materialism which one learns by serving the Lokayatika. Mahamati, what is meant by the attainment of the Dharma, truth? When the truth of self-mind and the twofold egolessness are understood, and further, when the nature of egolessness of things and person is seen into, discrimination ceases to assert itself. When the various stages of bodhisattvahood are thoroughly perceived one after another, the Shita, Manas, and Manavijnana are turned away, and when one enters upon the path of baptism by the wisdom of all the Buddhas, and takes hold of the 10 inexhaustible vows, one becomes sovereign master of all things by virtue of a life of effortlessness. Hence it is called the Dharma, as one is thereby released from all philosophical views, unsound reasonings, discriminations, and dualistic notions. As a rule, Mahamati, the philosophical views lead the ignorant, though not the wise, to a dualism, that is, to nihilism and eternalism. Eternalism rises from embracing a doctrine of no causation, while nihilism rises from believing in the annihilation of causal conditions and in the non-existence of a cause. I teach, however, the Dharma, so-called, which is subject to the conditions of rising, abiding, and destruction. This, Mahamati, is the conclusion with regard to worldly enjoyment and the Dharma. So it is said. Beings are subdued by the receptions samgraha, and are brought into subjection by the moral precepts sila. They are removed from philosophical views by transcendental knowledge prajna, and are nourished by the emancipations. All that is taught by the philosophers to no purpose is materialism. Where the realistic view of cause and effect is cherished, there is no self-realization. I teach to my group of disciples one self-realization which has nothing to do with cause and effect, being free from materialism. There is nothing but that which is seen of mind itself. The duality, too, is of the mind. While existence is observed as divided into the grasped and the grasping, it has nothing to do with eternalism or nihilism. As long as mentation goes on, there is materialism. When there is no rising of discrimination, the world is seen as of mind itself. Coming, ayam, means the originating of the objective world as effect, and going, the ayam, is the not seeing of the effect. When one thoroughly understands the coming and going, discrimination ceases. Eternity and non-eternity, the made and not made, this world and that world, all these and other ideas belong to materialism. At that time again Mahamati, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, said this to the Bhagavan. Nirvana is talked of by the Bhagavan. What does this term designate? What is the nirvana that is discriminated by all the philosophers? Said the Bhagavan, then Mahamati, listen well and reflect well within yourself. I will tell you. Certainly, Bhagavan, said Mahamati, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, and gave ear to the Bhagavan. The Bhagavan said this to him. As to such nirvanas as are discriminated by the philosophers, there are really none in existence. Some philosophers conceive nirvana to be found where a system of mentation no more operates owing to the cessation of the skandhas, dhatus, and ayatanas, or to the indifference to the objective world, or to the recognition that all things are impermanent, or where there is no recollection of the past and present, just as when a lamp is extinguished, or when a seed is burnt, or when a fire goes out, because then there is the cessation of all the substrate, which is explained by the philosophers as the non-arising of discrimination. But Mahamati, nirvana does not consist in mere annihilation. Again, some explain deliverance by going to another quarter and abode, as when a wind stops blowing, when the discrimination of objects ceases. Again, some philosophers explain deliverance by the getting rid of the dualistic view of knower and known. Some conceive deliverance to be the cessation of discrimination, where one sees permanence and impermanence. Again, some explain the discrimination of various forms as the bearer of pain, and yet not understanding that there is nothing but what is seen of mind itself, are alarmed by the notion of form, and seek their happiness in formlessness. In this they cherish the notion of nirvana. Again, some conceive this to be nirvana, that in consideration of generality and individuality recognizable in all things inner and outer, they are never destroyed, maintaining their being throughout the past, present, and future. Again, some conceive that nirvana is an ego soul, a being, a vital force, a nourisher, a supreme spirit, and the indestructibility of all things. Again, Mahamati, some philosophers, owing to their foolishness, declare this to be nirvana, that there is a primary substance, there is a supreme soul, and they are seen differently by each, and they produce all things from the transformation of the qualities. Some conceive nirvana to consist in the extinction of merit and demerit, some in the destruction of the passions by means of knowledge, some in regarding Svara as the free creator of the world. Some think that the world is born of interaction and that there is no special cause other than this cause, and clinging to it they have no awakening because of stupidity, and they conceive nirvana to consist in this non-awakening. Again, Mahamati, some philosophers conceive nirvana to be the attaining of the true path. Some cherish the thought of nirvana as where there is a union of qualities and their owner, from which there is oneness and otherness, boldness and not boldness. Some imagine that nirvana is where they see the self-nature of things existing all by its own nature, such as the variegated feathers of the peacock, variously formed precious stones, or the pointedness of a thorn. Some Mahamati conceive nirvana in the recognition of the 25 tattvas, truths, some in the king's observance of the teaching of the 6 virtues, some seeing that time is a creator and that the rise of the world depends on time, conceive that nirvana consists in recognizing this fact. Again, Mahamati, some conceive being to be nirvana, some non-being, while some conceive that all things and nirvana are not to be distinguished from one another. All these views of nirvana, severally advanced by the philosophers with their reasonings, are not in accord with logic, nor are they acceptable to the wise. Mahamati, they all conceive nirvana dualistically and in a causal connection. By these discriminations, Mahamati, all philosophers imagine nirvana, but there is nothing rising, nothing disappearing here, and there is no room for discrimination. Mahamati, each philosopher relying on his own textbook, from which he draws his understanding and intelligence, examines the subject and sins against the truth, because the truth is not as is imagined by him. His reasoning ends in setting the mind to wander about, and becoming confused, as nirvana is not to be found anywhere. Again, Mahamati, there are others who, roaring with all their knowledge as a lion roars, explain nirvana in the following wise. That is, nirvana is where it is recognized that there is nothing but what is seen of the mind itself, where there is no attachment to external objects, existent or non-existent, where, getting rid of the 4 propositions, there is an insight into the abode of reality as it is, where, recognizing the nature of the self-mind, one does not cherish the dualism of discrimination, where grasp and grasping are no more obtainable, where all logical measures are not seized upon, as it is realized that they never assert themselves, where the idea of truth is not adhered to, but treated with indifference because of its causing a bewilderment, where, by the attainment of the exalted Dharma, which lies within the inmost recesses of one's being, the 2 forms of egolessness are recognized, the 2 forms of passion subsided, and the 2 kinds of hindrance cleared away, where the stages of bodhisattvahood are passed one after another until the stage of tathagatahood is attained, in which all the samadhis, beginning with the mayapama, maya-like, are realized, and the shita, manas, and manovijnana are put away. Here, indeed, they say nirvana is to be found. Nirvana is severally conceived by the philosophers, but theirs is no more than imagination. It is not the way of emancipation. Released of bound and binding and free from all expediencies, the philosophers imagine they are emancipated, but emancipation is not to be found there. Divided into many a school are the systems of the philosophers. There is thus no emancipation in them, because of their imaginations stupidly carried on. Wrongly imbued with the ideas of cause and effect, all the philosophers are beguiled, and there is thus no emancipation for them who are of the dualistic school of being and non-being. The ignorant are delighted with discoursing and false reasoning, but they are unable to raise any great intelligence toward truth. Tattva. Discoursing is a source of suffering in the triple world, while truth is the extinguisher of suffering. Like an image seen in a mirror which is not real, the mind is seen by the ignorant in a dualistic form in the mirror of habit energy. When it is not thoroughly understood that there is nothing but what is seen of the mind itself, dualistic discriminations take place. When it is thoroughly understood that there is nothing but what is seen of the mind itself, discrimination ceases. Mind is no other than multiplicity, and yet it is devoid of qualified and qualifying. Forms are visible, but not in the way as seen discriminated by the ignorant. The triple world is no other than discrimination. There are no external objects. Discrimination sees multiplicity. This is not understood by the ignorant. The truth is told differently, discriminated in the different sutras because of names and notions. Yet apart from words, no meaning is attainable.